Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
Being you. These are reflections on our set of principles, and today the sixth principle will be the focus. Is that okay? The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. I actually wanted to, as I was reflecting on this myself, to say that part of what is going on right now is an expression of the other side of world community. The Olympics in Japan, with an amazing, amazing range of countries, with some countries having as few as 2 people participating, and others hundreds, like the US. But it is a coming together, even if they are not what we wish they were this year for other reasons. But even that reflects that effort to continue to create world community. So I just wanted to share that and have that in our thoughts. The opening words are not in your hymnal, but on the order of service. Let's read these together. No man ever steps in the same river twice. For it's not the same river, and he's not the same man. Heraclitus.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Our transitional words today are number 528 in the back of your hymnal. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the river. Langston Hughes. And now I would like to introduce John Lunsford, who is going to be sharing us a story that I'm very much looking forward to, and how this is, the title came out of it, The Blue Highway. I think most of you do know John, but if you don't, he has been, I don't know what we would be doing here without him. He has been the president of the board just recently, but is still continuing just as much effort and work and input as then. So John, please.
They call me Ishmael. Those words probably was the beginning of the first boat trip you ever read about. But like most voyages put to paper, Melville's story had a real basis for that famous novel. The Heart of the Sea is a book by Nathaniel Philbeck, and it's a true account based on the journal of a cabin boy of the ill-fated ship, the Essex. It was an American whaler, a Quaker boat, out of Nantucket, Massachusetts. And in 1820, while it was in the southern Pacific Ocean, under the command of George Pollard Jr., it was attacked and sunk by an enraged whale. Thousands of miles from the coast of South America, with little food or water, the 20-man crew was made for South America. Ironically, they shunned closer destinations like Hawaii because they were convinced that it was inhabited by cannibals. And they set out for Valparaiso, Chile, in the surviving whale boats. The men suffered severe dehydration, starvation, and exposure on the open ocean. And the survivors eventually resorted to eating their dead comrades. When that proved insufficient, they decided that they would sacrifice their lives so at least some of them could survive. A total of 7 crew members were cannibalized before the last of the 8 people were rescued. First mate Owen Chase and cabin boy Thomas Nickerson later wrote accounts of their ordeal, and the tragedy attracted a visitor to Nantucket that summer when they got back, who was Herman Melville, and in 1851 he wrote Moby Dick. Fortunately for us, nobody drew the black spot, and the only person that was cannibalized was about probably $100 worth of Little Debbie's. She has my heart. When Julie was asked if I was interested in giving a talk on this boat trip, I thought, well, I don't really think anybody's going to be that interested. And it struck me kind of a flashback to the 80s when you would get an invitation to go to your aunt and uncle's house to watch a usually fuzzy collection of 35 millimeter slides of their trip to Yellowstone. Usually that invitation was met with faked enthusiasm and the hope that they would have lots of cocktails. I really didn't think anybody would be that interested, but just in case, I'll try to put a little lipstick on this pig and tell you some stories. A little background. When I was real young, I loved motorcycles. I had a Honda and a BMW and a Harley and one Motor Guzzi that put me in the hospital and left me bedridden for months. But in '75, I sold the Harley and I bought a Cobia tri-hull and I became a boater. And like most of the addictions, I had it all dressed up. I had a Bimini and an 8-track player with a whole stack of Carlos Santana tapes. And but eventually, Raccoon Lake lost its appeal. Every weekend, it was just a zoo, and people didn't know what direction to be going and how to behave. And then one Labor Day weekend, a guy was in the water and a boat ran over him. And I decided that I would try to go somewhere else. So the next time I loaded the boat up, I went to Clinton and put it in the Wabash River. And I became a river boater. For the record, the Wabash, in the middle 70s, the EPA had just been started, and every town and factory along the river was using the river as a septic tank and waste disposal system. Very few people on the river for recreation. The ones that were out there were usually unique individuals, many with alcohol addictions and sporting a penchant for stunt boating, usually ending up in the emergency room after saying those famous words, "Watch this." The rest were tough, sunburnt fishermen in search of catfish and sturgeon, and a few old-timers who were the last of a once giant industry dedicated to wiping out the last surviving freshwater mussels that were not killed by pollution. Their bodies were discarded and their shells were sent out east to make millions of buttons. And the scraps were pelletized and sent to Southeast Asia to be used as seeds in the newly started cultured pearl industry. The Wabash River remains the largest unfettered river west of the Rocky Mountains. It was never channelized and only recently notated by Terre Haute native Jerry Hay. So the only way to learn how to read the river was to get lucky or make friends with an old fisherman, or by paying for that knowledge with propellers, skegs, and fiberglass. But it was a lot of fun, heading north to find an island to camp on, viewing egrets, and herons, deer, beaver, and later on eagles and otters. Most everyone here today has seen the Wabash River from Fairbanks Park. But it's much different looking at Terre Haute from the river. There are still a few characters on the Wabash. That's where me and Tom met. We were floating south of the prison. That was a good day. So what about the Great Loop? Well, YouTube is full of vlogs about people that are traversing the extensive canal system of Great Britain and Europe. But there's not a lot on American rivers and canals. From Evansville, Indiana, there's more than 25,000 miles of navigable river without ever stepping off your boat. Destinations range from Minneapolis to Tulsa, Pittsburgh to Chattanooga, Savannah to Corpus Christi, the Gulf of Mexico, the entire Atlantic coast, and an awful lot of Canada. The Great Loop is a 6,000-mile plus journey that circumnavigates the eastern half of the United States and Canada. And it includes rivers and lakes, canals, bays, the Intercoastal Waterway, Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Great Lakes. Every year, more people climb Mount Everest than complete the loop. The average time to complete the loop is probably about 9 months to a year. Some people take 2-3 years or more, and a couple have completed the journey in about 2 months on jet skis, and they had a huge group of helpers on land that followed them with fuel and a place to stay. And this is my third time on the Tennessee Tombigbee Waterway, which was a massive socialist program that was started in the late 70s, and it was designed to hook the Ohio River to the Gulf of Mexico and bypass the Mississippi. And so there's pictures, and there's a lot more in the dining room, but if you see something that spikes your curiosity as to, for instance, why the Staten Island Ferry was in Panama City, we can talk about it. So a lot of people ask questions, and so I just thought I would try to answer some of the questions that I had gotten over the years. Number one is, since there are no lines on the water, how do you know where you're at? Well, truthfully, sometimes that answer has been we didn't. Modern mapping software has made it easier, but we still have a buoy system, and buoys move. The Tombigbee right now is flooded again, and all of those buoys are moved, and once, if you live by buoys, red and green, you can really get in trouble. Number two, a lot of people asked, how much does it cost? So I guess the answer there is just how much do you want to spend? I met a father and a son who bought an old sailboat, and for $7,000, which included the sailboat, plus food, they did the loop. I also know of another couple who spent $400,000 for their boat and spent $86,000 on fuel and still had to pay for food. So you can just take your pick how much you want to spend. What's it cost to go through a lock? Nothing. It is free. You do take a back seat to commercial traffic. They get first choice. How big are the locks? Well, that depends on where you're at, what river, and what section of the river. But most of the boats, or most of the locks on the southern Tin Tom, are about 150 foot wide and 600 foot long. And the average drop is probably 35 feet. You're going up or down. The lock at Florence, Alabama, on the Tennessee River, is probably one of the largest locks in the world, and it's 1,000 feet long, 200 foot wide, and your boat drops basically the height of the Sycamore building. It's about 12 stories. When you're in that by yourself, I don't care how big a boat you got, you just feel like an ant. Are the locks ever closed? Well, basically they're open 24 hours a day, but they do break. People ram them. Maybe a big ship hits them. We had to stop and rest a day in north of Mobile because the Coffeyville lock the door had been hit, and they had to put it back on its pin. Sometimes the river is at flood stage, and they open the locks, and you just shoot through. On the Ohio River, they ask you to go over the dams. And then you usually just tie off for underwear changes. What powers a lock? Well, it's basically gravity. There are no pumps. Electricity does work the gears that open and shut the doors, and they do have electric valves on the pipes. But there's it's just gravity. It's just the upper level of the water trying to, they just match whatever it is. It's all up to the water. So what was our greatest danger? Well, for me, besides industrial secondhand smoke, the two guys I went with, I think Joe smoked 5 cartons of cigarettes. It was just a nonstop chain smoking. And Joe was a very nice guy, but he was stuck in a Cheech and Chong movie. He ate 8 bags of these one day. These are pot Doritos. 600 milligrams of THC in a bag. And I guess this is one of these deals where when you smoke pot, you got the munchies. This is just a cyclical thing. Yeah, you eat these, you get the munchies, you eat more. But probably our biggest nemesis is a 6-inch styrofoam ball. They're hard to see in the daytime, and they're impossible to see at night. And they're connected to a rope and ultimately to a metal cage. And that's where all of you got your fresh crab meat from. They're crab traps, and you don't see them, you drive over them, it wraps around your propeller, you're dead in the water, you got to do a little scuba diving. These traps ensnare hundreds of boats each season, and many times they appear 20 miles from shore, and they don't even make them white. Some are white, but a lot of them are dark green and blue, and wow, they're tough. So how many locks do you have to go through? Well, I have a map in the dining room, if you guys want to look at it, that shows all the locks in the eastern half of the United States. But to do the loop, depending on the route you take, is going to require at least 150 locks, because you change altitude from 0 to 800 or 900 at different times, maybe even 1,000 when you go over the mountains. The route you take is dependent on how tall your boat is. If your boat is more than 19 foot 7 inches, you can't do the loop at all, not as a complete circle. There is a bridge up between Kankakee and Chicago on the Peoria or the Illinois River that used to be a swing bridge, and it hasn't moved in years, and so that limits your height. But there are other ways to go, but if you're over 15 foot 7, for instance, you cannot do the western half of the Erie Canal. You have to get off at the Oswego Canal, or you can go all the way, you can take the Hudson River all the way to Canada and go to the St. Lawrence Seaway. So another question was, what is your average speed? Well, speed changes dependent on whether or not you're going upstream or down, sometimes the current, and sometimes even the wind. But a 40-foot boat with 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and 3 diesel engines is by its nature not a Toyota Prius. It has a hull speed, and that is the most economical speed that you can travel. If you exceed your hull speed, your mileage goes down. But in general, at 9 miles an hour, we burned 3 gallons of fuel. And at $3 a gallon, it's about a buck a mile. Last fall, going to Key West, it cost 92 cents because the current was at our back. But we burn a little over $1 coming north. But if you just bump the gas up a little bit and you go from 9 miles an hour to say 15, your hourly fuel burn is 35 gallons an hour, which boosts that to like $7 a mile. So the difference, how fast you want to go, is like $6,000 opposed to $42,000, you know. And 15's, you know, some guys do it faster if they got lots of money. So do you need a license to do the loop? Well, no. Probably your insurance company is going to tell you what you can drive based on your experience and how long you've boated. Once you get over 40 foot, insurance companies are not just going to let you, I want to buy a boat. They're not going to insure your boat. Now, if you're filthy rich and it doesn't make any difference to you, I guess you can just go buy whatever you want. But for most normal people, the insurance company is going to tell you. But you can get a license. It's called a 6-pack license. And that allows you to carry 6 paying people. Commercial towboat drivers that, let's say they want a license for the Mississippi, they're required to do what, in my opinion, is just a superhuman feat. I can't remember what I went into the next room for. And they have to sit down with a big blank spiral notebook. It's about this wide when it's laid out. And for memory, they have to draw the entire Mississippi River section that they're going to pilot on. Every curve, every snag, every sandbar, they have to do it from memory. I don't get it. Oh, there's the Dorweeders. That's just a pipe sticking up in the middle of the Tom Bigby River spraying water in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea whose bathroom that came out of. So like I say, in the dining room, I do have river charts. I got a big map of the eastern half of the United States, and you can see all the different locks. And I do have all of these photographs and a lot more. This is just about 95 pictures. And I did have somebody say, well, you know, you had an awful lot of nice, pretty sunsets, and I'm convinced that anybody can take good sunsets and sunrises. You just have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and be out in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do. Sitting in the house, the same sunset, you know, wherever I was, there was a lot of people that didn't see that sunset because they were in the house watching the Wheel of Fortune. So my last question was, how do you go to the bathroom? Or the head, as it's known on a boat. Well, that term originated during early sailing vessels. Sailboats back then could only sail with the wind at their back. They got pushed. They couldn't sail like modern sailboats. So the wind was always coming from the back. So they went to the head of the boat to use the bathroom. But on today, you got a lot of choices. For guys, you can just go over the side. But that's not always a good idea if the wind's blowing in the wrong direction. And you can lose your balance and fall overboard. The United States Coast Guard claims that 60% of male drowning victims have their pants unzipped. So they complicate it. You can take a leak off the side of the boat. That is legal. If you pee in a cup, and you know, which is a lot safer, especially if the wind's not blowing, that's illegal. You can pee directly in the river, but you can't pee in a cup and then dump it in the river. At sea, most sailors just use a plastic bucket. You know, if you're closer than 3 miles to shore, you can't do that anymore. You can only do it 3 miles out. Sanssouci uses a very complicated system that uses vacuum pumps, a lot of fun to work on, 2 separate tanks, but it only uses a small amount of water. And since it uses fresh water and not the seawater, the seawater has bacteria that can permeate the plastic hoses, and seawater flush toilets always stink more. Some pumps or some boats have another system that uses salt water, or if you're in fresh water, you have to dump salt in them, and it takes salt water and electricity and creates chlorine, and then it grinds it up, injects chlorine, and it just goes out the bottom of the boat too. It kills all the bacteria. How long those will be with us, I don't know. It's getting really hard in a lot of places to have toilets. And Florida, you know, it used to be you could get your tank pumped out usually for free if you because the alternative is to dump it, you know, so in my book, pumping it out for free makes sense. I have seen it $25 to, you know, and that's pretty. Now a lot of boats are going to composting toilets that just use peat moss or coir, which is coconut hulls. and it breaks it down, and then you can just put it in dumpsters when you're, you can just, it's just biodegradable. And finally, if you have a lot of electricity, your boat happens to be a nuclear submarine or something, you can use what's called an incinerator, which is kind of spooky to sit on one. It's all stainless steel, looks like a small washing machine with a toilet seat on top. And you put like a coffee filter in there, and then once you do your business, you push a button, and it drops down, and it uses 240 volts, and it burns it. And every 6-8 months, you empty a little drawer that has some ash in it. So that's all of the questions I have, unless you guys have got some. If there's anything you want to know about, that's what it looks like at the ocean. It's just 2 colors of blue, and at 6 miles an hour, it can get a little boring when it's 100 degrees, and there's nothing to, without trees and stuff. I like rivers, and the rivers kind of mark how fast you're going. 9 miles an hour seems real fast on the river. Out there, it's not. Have we went through it all once, Bill? Okay. So, any questions? That's all I got, guys. No great moral today. Oh yeah. I'd really like to do the rest of it. I went from Terre Haute. We left from Terre Haute years ago and went to New Orleans, in an old junkety, rickety boat. But having 2 bathrooms makes it a little nicer. But yeah, I'd like to finish it. But whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well, thank you very much, John, for shall we say, inspiring sharing. Our closing hymn is number 25. Our closing words. A river seems magic, moving, living part of the very earth itself. Laura Gilpin.
May the blessings